Welcome, everyone, to 1111 Calling Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Haynes, and today we are talking with Alex Balgood. Alex is an author, an artist, a creator, a dancer, MLD certified massage therapist, a life and nutritionist coach, a podcaster where she hosts the Leap of Health podcast, a YouTuber, and recently, she just released her book, Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Love or hate your amazing or awful parents, gift yourself the perspective within the lesson. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. Like we've communicated here and there over the past year, I'd say, since we both took a podcasting class and released our podcast. But this is our first time getting to actually speak to each other. So thank you. I appreciate having you here today. And I'm excited to talk to you. I just read your book, which was really cool. And before we get into that, I thought maybe first you could let our listeners know, give them a little brief history about who you are, where you come from, and how you got to this point in your life.
Yes. So again, thank you for having me today. As you mentioned, I am a dancer, an artist, writer, podcaster. I'm all of those things. I'm since very young age, I've been drawn to the arts, to painting, singing, dancing. I've been a professional dancer for quite a while. I've gone around the world teaching and doing shows. So yeah, dancing has been like one of those doors that has opened my mind and life and soul to a lot of different people, cultures. And now with the book too, I just launched my book not too long ago. And so I've been sharing part of my story and my parents. And I'm also, as you mentioned, I'm a massage therapist. I love that. I love that all the connection with others and trying to help them heal, either connecting with others and practitioners with like different modalities. I'm all about alternative health, and that's like what my podcast is all about, trying to find all those modalities that are not as well known as just a regular, medicine and go to the doctor, but trying to bring all these other practitioners that work with like acupuncturists, practitioners that work with our energy and things like that, which I think it's like super fascinating because I feel like those modalities been there for such a long time, but a lot of people still don't know much about them. So I love to bring and connect with other people that likes to heal themselves with alternatives and not just like with medicine. And I mean, medicine is great, it helps in a lot of things, but I think learning about other cultures and how their healing methods and all that, it's awesome and great, and sometimes it's like very inexpensive, so why not? So yeah, I'm a little bit of everything. I've jumped from all over the place. I am Mexican American, I will say. And so, yeah, I share the American culture, my Mexican culture, and I feel like I have adopted a lot within my life from other cultures to make me who I am.
I love that. I love that. I actually found through reading your book that we have a lot in common. We're kind of kindred spirits. We'll touch on it a little bit in your book, but the whole like running so fast, you didn't know where you're going, but you wanted to get away from this. So you're just going to run towards whatever, and I did a lot of that too. So did you grow up in Mexico? Is that where you moved from? I wasn't sure about that when I was reading your book, where your home base was before you moved.
I come into the States since I was very, very little, like 5-6 years old. And so I lived that part of my life in Mexico, and then I moved to the States like around 15, 16, permanently here with my grandparents. And so since then, I've been here my whole, pretty much the rest of my life, which I think about it now, and I'm like, wow, that's, I've been here for so long. So it's one of those things that you're like, so where's home now? Like where am I from now? Right. But I do feel like I am, they used to ask me like all these questions all the time at work, like, where are you from? Because I have like a weird accent. It's not like really Mexican accent, but it is some sort of Latino accent.
Mhm.
And so they're always like, where are you from? And I will say in a jokingly way, I'm from the world.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how I feel. Like I've been in so many countries that, when I have visit and make friends from there, I don't know, it's just like this part of me that I'm like, this feels like home too.
Well, and who knows, and I'm one that believes we live many lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so there may be this remembering on a soul level of something you've experienced before or somewhere you've been before. So that's really interesting. And
Yes, and it happens the same with music, and I feel like that's why I loved dancing,
mhm,
because I went to all these places where they didn't speak English or Spanish, and yet you know they will hand the hand for you to join them on the dance floor, and you go to the dance floor, and you don't know, you know, you can't understand anything what they're saying to you, but as you dance, you have this amazing communication,
yeah.
this unspoken communication. I think that's why I love dancing the most, because you could go anywhere around the world and have an awesome conversation with this person that you cannot even pronounce their names.
Right, right.
So it's so cool. I love it.
Do you still dance? Like, are you
Yes.
still, I know you do some dancing, but are you still dancing professionally or performing, or is it mostly
Uh,
just a hobby at this point?
so now this year, I actually recently moved to Texas. Last year, I did a lot of teaching. I didn't do much shows because of the pandemic and all that. I think last year, that's when everything kind of like started opening up, especially for dancing, because it's a partner thing. So I think with COVID, we kind of like slowed down on all that. There was dancing, but not really like with a partner.
Mhm.
So last year, I loved that, all that dancing with like dance halls and clubs and all that open up again, which it was really, really great. I feel like connecting with others, it's so essential for humanity. so
Yes,
so when we were
huge.
so when we were isolated for so long, personally, I felt it,
Yeah.
through my soul, because I was so used to touching people and hugging people and dancing together and holding hands and all that, that being isolated, it really kind of like affect me, to my soul. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a huge part of you that was taken away for that time period. How did you deal with that?
I need to like always be busy and doing things. And so I couldn't dance. That was just a fact. Things were closed. All the studios that I worked for, like teaching, they were closed. All the clubs were closed because we couldn't gather because of COVID. So what I did, I went back to school. So I
Yeah,
did the whole online school. That's how I finally graduated from massage therapist school. And
awesome.
also,
Congratulations.
thank you. And I also did my degree on nutritionist, and I did that all online. Since the first like month that we were locked up, I was like, you know what? I don't know how long this is gonna go. This seems like a serious thing, and maybe me that I just can't stay still.
Yeah.
I was like really on the whole year of the pandemic, when everything closed down, I went back to school. I started my podcast. What else did I do? I started writing my book.
Mhm.
So it was a year full of things and accomplishments. And yet I didn't, I couldn't see my friends. I couldn't hug them. I couldn't dance with anyone. But I feel like I connected with myself. in a
Yeah.
whole different level. I think dancing gave me the opportunity to meet others and connect with others. But I think, I know a lot of bad things happen within the pandemic, but to me, it was a great opportunity to actually see what I was made of and doing what I wanted to do for the longest time. So I
Yeah.
guess that's how I kind of like cope with the whole thing. And even seeing people through Zoom in school, it made me still feel part of something bigger.
That's interesting because what you just said there is a parallel to what you were talking about in your book, right? So you had whatever it is that you've been handed, whether it be through your home life, parental life, or a pandemic, you discovered these things about yourself, or you connected to yourself in a way that you grew and positive things came out of it. That's not to say that there wasn't tragedy within the pandemic, or there's not tragedy within abusive households or less than ideal situations to grow up in. And yet we can still grow from those experiences. We can still choose to reflect upon them in a way that makes us stronger. So I think this is a good lead in to discuss your book.
Yes.
I'm excited. So I read this book. I really liked it because, I think there's a lot that we can all relate to in various experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. I got some things highlighted here, and one we already kind of touched on, and I'm just going to read from your book here real quick. You say, I just wanted to run away from life, from dad, mom, my family, my thoughts, everything. That was one good skill I felt I had. I called myself a runner, and that's pretty much what I did. I ran away from everything that slightly brought me any emotional discomfort. I would just run. Just now, it gives me goosebumps because I think I was in my 20s when I realized that's what I was doing as well. And mine wasn't quite the same type of running, but really living fast and hard. So that, and constantly being entertained or distracted. I wanted to do everything, and I wanted to do everything extreme. And I think that's very similar because it takes you away from what you were running from. So what were you running from?
Yes, I ran from everything. From, pretty much dealing with, I think mostly like dealing with any emotion. Like I try to be, at that time, I thought, being tough and not talk about what I was feeling was the right thing. Like, my dad is about to die and I just didn't want to see that. And I thought, I'm going to tough it up and just moved on and whatever. And I did that with like a lot of things too. Like with school, sometimes I'll be like, I'm too cool for this. I'm too smart to go through school or to do this class or that, or I don't need that. I don't need anyone. So I will just run through life like that, not knowing that I was missing that opportunity of growing. I'm not saying I had like the worst life or anything. I think you do what you do with what you can on your tool bag, and that's what I knew, and that's what it felt good just to, you know what, I don't want to deal with how I feel right now, how devastated it is to lose a parent or even to see them sick, or how devastated it is to see mom working 24 hours to support me. And instead of kind of like, maybe now it could be like, oh, I could have been more supportive, more loving. But all that I knew was like, you know what, I could just run from this place and move with grandparents and not know what's going on behind me. And exactly. I think we do that a lot with everything. I think that's something easy to do, and I think that's why we all do it, saying it's right or wrong. We just do it because it feels good at the moment, and it feels good not to deal with things and seeing things and live. I think living, it's that's what it is. Living, it's all about dealing with all these emotions, and we just can't sometimes. So
and I think in the moment probably aren't even aware that's what we're doing. I
Exactly.
think it just seems like, oh, hey, there's something new and exciting and interesting, and I'm just going to move towards that, and then
Yeah.
move towards the next thing and move towards the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I mean, eventually I got somewhere where it didn't work anymore, and eventually it didn't make me feel any better. And when I did look behind, I had a bigger mess than I had accumulated, quite a mess. So
Yeah.
but it's okay. I think there's no judgment there. The shoulda, woulda, coulda,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't meant to be that way. So we've experienced what we've experienced to get us where we needed to go to become the people we are, to share the gifts that we have, I believe. So
Exactly.
I think your story is very inspiring. And I thought it was cool that you brought up, again, something that resonated for me is kind of the mentor part. Like, these mentors we have in our life that aren't necessarily mom or dad or who raised us, but somebody else who is a significant part of our life that helps shape us. Can you speak about who some of those were for you? I think grandparents obviously played a big role, and some other people as well.
Yes. I've been I love that. I love talking about mentors. I actually did a whole section in my podcast about mentorship and all these awesome stories. I believe that I feel like I came later in my life to learn that, because I was a very stubborn person. In one of my interviews, I talk about how our parents raise us the way they can. And something that I was raised with, it was like, you could do it all yourself. Like anything that you could put in your mind and whatever, you could do it. And that was really good. Like it served me in a lot of ways. But I remember really well that I've been drawing and painting since I was very little, probably since I was like, 4 or 5 years old. I have been into the arts forever, late teens, early 20s. I needed to take a class in college, and it was an art class. And since little till that point, I never took an art class, never, because I said, I'm not going to take an art class because, true artists don't do that. And what a silly thought, right?
Yeah.
Like now, but that's how I was so committed to be this artist and this painter that I was like, no, true
like somehow
artists
that
don't do
was
that.
a sign of weakness. Like, only people
Yes.
who aren't artists need help with art.
Yes, exactly. I draw and I practice and I did art shows and the whole thing. I developed a technique on how to draw the human figure.
Uh-huh.
And so anyways,
Cool.
I did that. Yeah. So I did that for the longest, and I came up with like these techniques and whatever, right? Little that I knew, going back to my college class, I needed to take this class to get my associates or something like that. And so anyways, long story short, I enrolled to the class, and I enrolled to the highest like level of drawing, because that's what I thought I needed to do, because all the other ones they were gonna be like, they were not gonna serve me at all, because I already knew. I had already done exhibitions and I didn't needed these classes. So anyways, I enrolled into this class, and to this class feeling like I am the artist.
Right.
I am the true artist. And these classes are called life drawing, meaning that you get an actual model and you start doing this like poses and the whole thing. The first class, the instructor goes like, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and draw this pose. We have this amazing model, whatever. And I was like, okay, I got this. I've been developing these techniques for years. And so I took a moment. I started looking around at all these, all these other students, and they're doing the technique I develop.
Right.
And so I'm looking and I was like, what? Like I'm looking around and everybody's doing all these like techniques, telling the story, because all these years that it took me to come up with these techniques and develop, they were already there before I was born. And closing my mind, it got me to not grow as fast as I probably could have been. I don't know, the next Picasso or whatever you want to think about. But it really, that day was one of the days that like a turning point, and just in life, not even like just in art itself, but it showed me how we can really take our lives in these directions, and we get there and we realize how close we've been to the world, to life itself, and to the opportunities. Because I could have taken classes when I was little, I could have enjoyed the teachings of others. I didn't. And so in my early 20s, that's when I was like, wow, no, this was not smart at all. Like we could do things. I'm not saying we cannot. I believe we can do anything we can think of and more. But I have come to the realization that we need each other. We need mentors, and mentors can be your teachers. Mentors can be the people that we come up across the streets, like walking. Like we don't even have to know their names for them to change our life. We have mentors all over. We're mentors of each other, whether we know or whether we're like close friends or not. And I think that's really important for like just our evolution. I feel like once you acknowledge that, life changes.
I do think sometimes we can wear our stubbornness or our toughness, our badassery, whatever you want to call it, like this badge of honor, right? And we cling to it, like my worth is here. Like this is where I get my self-worth or my identity. And I too went through that, where you have this realization, like, while there are good parts to that, there's a whole bunch of it that's self-defeating. It's that saying, I believe it goes, cutting off your nose despite your face or something, which is such a weird saying, but I think that's what it means. You really, if you just loosen the grip on that egoic kind of viewpoint, that you'll actually grow much faster, maybe be happier, meet so many wonderful people and create new opportunities. So it's a hard, I still struggle with it a little bit sometimes, that doesn't go away easily. It took a lifetime to develop it. It's not going to go away overnight. So I do think that's a good point, that two things in what you just said there. One is be open to just new people, new opportunities, trying things a different way outside of your comfort zone, because you'd be surprised how it might impact you. And a lot of times it might be in a way you weren't even looking for. Like maybe you're going to take an art class because you want to learn art better, but it might be the art teacher that you meet and that might cause you to grow in a new way. So I think that's really cool.
And I would like to say that with these, it's like a life lesson. Like it never stops. Like I feel like even though that class changed my view of things, it's still in my life. There's a lot of things that I have to be like, I'm not being open to things. I'm not seeing the whole picture. So it's like one of those lessons in life that it just keeps coming, because it's such a big lesson to learn. And so, for everyone that is listening, it's not something that you're just going to learn one time. Like many other lessons, you don't just learn them and you're like, okay, check.
I'm done.
I'm done. Life is such a cool thing that it never stops.
There's no endpoint to evolution, right? To your,
exactly.
Those mentors, I think, could also be called soulmates in a way, because I think soulmates are meant to help your soul along its path, not this romantic,
Guide us.
I found my soulmate, but yeah,
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
guides in this lifetime. How did you feel called to write this book? Because to me, writing a book, I'm like, oh my God, I could never write a book. That's crazy. Like, how could I ever collect these thoughts, these ideas, whatever, put it together in this package that makes sense to anybody else, or so how did you decide to do that?
Yeah, so I've been writing my whole life. I'm one of those persons that collect journals from when I was like 6, 7, 12, wow. 15. Yeah, I have a bunch of journals that here and there I go back to them to read. And I was like, wow, what was I thinking writing all this? But it gives me a cool idea of how I evolved into what I am today. And I always wanted to write a book. I didn't know what was the book going to be about. And when the idea came, I thought I was actually going to write a book about my dad only. So I wanted to, since I'm all into health modalities and all that, I actually, the idea came because I wanted to write about my dad and his illness. He passed away from cancer, stomach cancer, and then it kind of like spread through everything. At that time when he passed, I kind of only knew Western medicine and a little bit of what we did at home, like herbs and things like that we will use for healing. But that was what I knew about health modalities. So when he passed away, it was like, wow, we couldn't do anything for him. So I wanted to write the book telling the story of my dad, and I wanted to show the readers and the world, I guess, how we have missed on a lot of health modalities that can help people. And I'm not saying there's a cure for cancer or for AIDS or things like that, but there is a lot of other modalities besides Western medicine that can actually benefit these people that are ill. And so to give them, I guess, more life and or more quality life. So my idea was like, I'm going to tell the story of my dad and talk about all these modalities that people with cancer or with a certain illness like that can be helped and maybe be cancer free for a longer time. So that was my idea. But then, as you know, our media or social media and everything, they get controlled by certain industries. And one of the industries is our pharmaceutical industry. And so me writing a book about that was going to be huge. And I'm not saying I'm like this big writer or anything like that, or this famous person. But what it's been happening, I know for sure that people that have write these books within the holistic space, like Amazon and other book places where you publish your books, they will ask you to edit them. Yes, they will tell you like, well, you're kind of saying like it might cure this or whatever, even though you're not saying it. So they will, there's a lot of hold on things like that, a lot of stops that they want you to edit your book and whatever. So anyways, that's the book that I really wanted to write. And I'm sure not right now, but later I could probably write something.
I'm like, I think you should still write it.
Yes. I think I will.
I think that would be very challenging.
Yes.
During the pandemic years because it was so controversial.
Exactly.
But it needs to be heard.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I still have the thought in my mind. Yep. For sure.
Yep.
And I will write it in a better time, I guess. And so anyways, because I wanted to write a book and I wanted to go to the process of publishing a book, I wanted to do a book that was not going to be censored and I needed to rewrite pretty much. It just came to me. I was like, myself, I've gone through so much learning through my life that I wanted everyone to to not go through maybe everything that I've gone through, but I feel like books helps us of my life and what I went through and how it did change my life. And I think once I knew I wanted to write about mom and dad and what they taught me, that was it. I was like, and it was very scary. Don't get me wrong. I think that's one of the scariest things I've done in ever, because I print my life story
Yeah, it's
for
pretty
the world
vulnerable, right?
to read, and they're gonna know very intimate things about me and my family. And there was some family members that were very like, don't write it, people don't need to know our lives, no one cares, all this. And I was like, I get it. And
Yeah.
I try my best, and I feel like I did my best to try not to add anyone into the book but me and my experience through my life, which was with my parents, because I have two siblings, and I'm sure their experience with my two parents were not the same at all. But yeah, I feel that that was like the best way, and I was very excited to show that even though you can go through, a lot of crazy life moments, there's always good, and there's
Yeah.
always amazing life to go.
I always talk about like it's not your whole story. These instances or traumas or past experiences, it's part of your story. It's part of who you are, but it isn't who you are, and it isn't your whole story. Don't buy into that you continue to keep writing your story, and how you react to those experiences is really what I think is more defining. I want to read something out of your book, and you say, knowing where our parents come from really gives you a different insight of the why they scream, the why they don't hug or say, I love you often. It gives you the why they are addicts or violent, the why they are absent. It gives us an understanding of the why of their pain. And there is not a manual for parents. There is also not one for being a good son or daughter. So be kind to yourself. We do hurt our parents as much as they hurt us sometimes, but breaking those chains, that's where we are born again, where we get to start all over. And I think that's huge. I do think really, some people won't have the opportunity to understand those whys necessarily. Maybe they're not in relation or can't have those conversations, or a parent has passed on and they didn't really get to figure out, speak to them as an adult. I can think of people who passed when I was younger. I'm like, I wish they were alive right now so I could talk to them,
Yes.
at this stage of my life. But sometimes you can't, and even without understanding some of that, being able to break those chains and move on, I think is huge. So that really resonated with me there. I have been interviewing my mom a handful of times. She's 88. She'll let me interview her, but she won't let me air them. But it's still okay, because I'm learning so much. And I'm the youngest of 9. I have 8 older siblings. And guaranteed, 100%, we all have this totally different perspective and viewpoint of our parental figures, and it's interesting. So that everybody is having their own unique experience, even within the same family, is amazing to me. But it's important to understand that ours is just our own, and we can still learn from others as well. And just being able to speak to my mom about some of that has been really interesting, and it's been beautiful to share in that. You had said at one point, I think it was your dad's mom, you said she was full of thoughts and I wish she would have shared them with me.
Yes.
Like even when I was reading about her, like you hanging out with her and she was pretty quiet. And I think she was the one that was she the one that would give you like chores to do?
Yes,
yes,
because I was
talking to her.
I was very energetic. I think I'm still are. And she will just, she was cool. She will just sit me on this chair and she'll be like, okay, here, I'm going to show you how to knit. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to do anything, any manuality or, anything, draw, paint, anything. But sit right here and do not move until you're
Yeah. I was even like, I wonder what's going on in her head. You know, like
Yes.
I was just visualizing this woman and like, man, she had so much in there,
Yeah.
but it's what everybody's so different in what they're capable of. And I
Yeah.
do think it takes that courage to be vulnerable and to open yourself up like you have with this book. I think that's beautiful. And I really think that's what a lot of people are attracted to. They see in somebody else that they can be open and vulnerable and real. And it's kind of like it gives them permission to do the same or just be validated in that I feel you, I see you,
Yes.
I can relate to that. I think that's another great part of this book is there's so many little pieces in here that we can each relate to. And one other thing that I want to touch on with this, and this is generational trauma. And you said in your book, we pass on traumas and feelings if we don't talk about our shit. If we don't heal what happened to us, we will continue to pass that on to the next generation. And it's crazy how that happens. I understand parts of it. I can wrap my head around parts of it. Other parts I can't quite, but I know it's true. Even another woman I had on, Dr. Mary Shackleton, she's a naturopathic doctor. She brought up that generational trauma, and especially with women. And if you're not dealing with it, not just your own, but the past generational trauma, it shows up as disease in your body, specifically with women breast cancer, she was saying. And
Oh, yeah.
often
Hmm.
it's in the left breast, which is above
The
your
heart.
heart.
Wow. Yeah, I believe
Interesting,
that
right?
definitely. Yes.
That generational trauma, what are your feelings about that? Like, talk to me a little bit about that and how you have learned to deal with that or release it.
Yes. As I was running,
Mhm.
I thought it was, you're one for yourself. That's it. Right? We're running away from things and we're like, well, as long as I am good and as I do my thing and I do whatever I want, life is good. But then realizing, you know, that was not it. Once my dad passed, once I realized how young he was and realized that my mother was so young too, in my eyes, in my late 20s, actually, that's when I actually realized that. Because I feel like we always see our parents like they're old. But now that I'm a little older, I'm going to be 40 this year. This is the first time I said, oh.
That's awesome.
It's crazy because my dad passed at 41 and I'm going to be 40 and I'm really young and full of life and full of dreams. Energetically, I'm like crazy. So knowing that, my mom had to go through pretty much like two friggin' like 24-hour shifts to bring money to our table, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
tough because she was pretty young. She was like probably 30s, late 20s, I don't know, but that's a very young person to be really stressed out about feeding three.
Gives you
And
a
I
whole new
just,
level of respect when you can really
yes,
think about what that takes to do that. It's like,
yeah,
gosh,
yeah. And not just that, I mean, I think about myself and all the things that I want
yeah,
and that I wanted at that age, knowing that she was that young and she almost didn't have that when you're that young, you should go through, have fun and
yeah,
go out and meet places and people and travel and all that. And she didn't have that. So me reflecting, I'm like, wow, my mother really spent all her really good years of her life trying to give us a good life. And then thinking about, going that step back to my grandmother, she's good. She lives with, she has a nice house. She lives with my uncles. She's good. She's healthy, whatever. But going back to her and then thinking about like, where was she at her late 20s and her early 30s? That brings me a lot of perspective because in her early 30s, she was still having kids, and she already had a lot of them. She had 9 kids. What was going through her mind? I think it was a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Not judging that she had 9 kids, whatever. At those times, people had a lot of kids. I think she had all these kids, and she had this like crazy younger life. Maybe she was holding all this pain and hurt that she was never seen. She was really never seen by my great grandparents. And so I think just acknowledging that gives me, it kind of like breaks the chain with me, that if I ever have a girl or, any kids, they're going to know that great grandparents were awesome and they do what they could, but they could have maybe not used violence to raise their kids. And
Right.
they'll know that my grandma, even though she went through like crazy life and did her best, that I will also not do certain things that she did to my mother.
Yeah.
And that my mother, even though she was a well-educated person, also used things to raise us, including violence, that I would not agree to that. So I think just acknowledging and going back, and as you said, it's not like judging time or anything like that. It's more about like going back and see how they did things and acknowledging that they did their best, pretty much. And I think that will bring anyone, and it brings me like some sort of peace, like it was not as bad as it felt when I was like a kid. Now I know that they did their best, and as crazy as it might sound, they did it because they loved us. And
And
that's the only tools they knew.
that's what was modeled for them. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a good thing to remember, is they can only function from a place in which they've had experiences, and what were their
exactly.
experiences like. And I think my mom's 88, her generation was very different. Her parents were immigrants from Belgium. They went through some crazy stuff like World
Yeah,
War One. I
that
mean,
adds
they
up. Being an
were
immigrant adds
refugees.
up. Yeah,
Yeah. And so even, her upbringing, well, her parents were bringing the best they could to it with what they knew and what they thought was right. Like we were talking about, like wearing our toughness like a badge of honor. I think our parents thought that kind of discipline, that firm discipline, or corporal punishment, whatever you want to call it, was a good thing, that it, was going to make you tougher. And I think they too didn't talk about stuff like that, right? Like you didn't talk about your private business and this and that. I try to talk to my daughter. You have to talk to kids in a way that's appropriate, right? Like they're not adults. They don't need to hear too much, but at the same time, being honest about some of our experiences, I think is important, because a couple of things. Like when I was, you knew everything and you were enlightened and life was great. And it's more like, no, when I became an adult, the shit hit the fan. I had to go back and
yes.
untangle a bunch of stuff and realize, oh God, you're never done, and that's a beautiful thing. You have these waves of hard times and experiences, and then you learn tools to get through them, and then you reap the rewards of that learning experience. And then there's always something else that comes along, whether it's a conflict, an illness, a struggle, or a change. It's not necessarily all doom and gloom or anything like that. But I do believe that just being able to talk about those things, like sharing with my daughter some of the experiences and traumas I had growing up, in a way that's appropriate for her to hear, so that she can
Exactly.
understand, like, we're not these unrealistic, perfect beings. Or also give her understanding, like, yeah, I'm not perfect. I have some of my own baggage. I am trying to work on it. I try to talk about it and modeling that for her, because she's going to have her own shit. She does. I mean, she has her own story of stuff, and that's for her to navigate with me by her side, but ultimately it's hers to choose how and what to do with it. So I think being able to share those experiences in the moment in a way that's appropriate is helpful and different than I think how our parents were raised to do. So even if we can do that little bit, then I think, like you said, that's the breaking of the change, at least part of it.
Exactly. And it just makes a big difference with all the, it's just about, and when you said, like older generations, they really never talk about anything because it was kind of like a weakness to do so. From my experience, once you talk about things, they just feel lighter.
Yeah. Or they're not as crazy as you thought they were, or maybe they are, but it feels better to have it out.
Exactly. Sometimes we create all these stories in our minds about how bad things are, but then, in the book, I talk about our regulators. I don't know if you remember that part, but our regulators are those people that listen to our stories.
Yeah.
And it makes they may think lighter. That's why it's so important to have, to talk to your parents, or if you have siblings, or if you don't have parents or siblings, to talk to friends, teacher, anyone, just talking anything that's holding you back or that is making you feel a certain way, just talk it out and you will feel just lighter and probably was not as bad as you thought, and then you just move on.
Yeah. I think you even mentioned it in there, holding it in or having those ill feelings is like, it's like drinking poison, and so if you can let it out or direct it in a different way, it's going to be less toxic to you. And I think that's a good thing. In closing, so what's inspiring you right now? What's been on your mind? Where do you find inspiration, and what's really calling to you right now?
Yeah, I think lately nature, going outside, going for a walk, just feeling the sun, it just makes me feel better, and it makes me feel a little bit more creative. I'm gonna start writing my second book soon, so I'm super excited about that. And so it's gonna I'll tell you the name because I think it's hilarious. It's the title is The Religious Slut. Like a home.
Oh, SLUT.
Yeah.
Really? Oh my goodness. You got me curious now.
Yes. So it's gonna be really great. I'm gonna be talking about all my experiences with religion. So it's gonna be cool. Because I think that's one of the things in everybody's life that we hold in fear for some weird, crazy reason. So I'll talk about
we can have a whole conversation on that.
I'll come back to you.
Thank you so much for sharing in this conversation today. I've really enjoyed it. I love connecting with you in this new way, and I look forward to your next book. I can't wait to check it out, and I totally am going to want to talk to you about it. And I wish you all the best in all your creative endeavors.
Thank you so much.
I hope you all enjoyed the conversation with Alex today. I had a lot of fun connecting with her. She's such a bright spirit and has this beautiful energy about her. I look forward to her next book. That's going to be really interesting. I'll probably have her on again so we can chat about that. In the meantime, I really encourage you to check out her book. It's called Parents, Our Greatest Teachers, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. I haven't been able to listen to all our episodes of Leap of Health, but I've tapped into several of them because I love the conversation around alternative medicines, just thinking outside the box when it comes to healing and health in general. And that's called Leap of Health. Again, I'll have a link to that in the show notes. I think in closing, I'm just going to read a quote from her, the end of her book. She says, "Every time you go out the door, you can change lives for the good or for the bad. And being aware of this power makes us more conscious, more whole, as we are part of something bigger than we can imagine." I think that's good food for thought right there. And I hope that not only for myself, but for all of you, that somewhere in our day to day, we make a conscious choice to bring love and light into this world and affect someone else's life in a positive way. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, please share with a friend or post on social media. You can always leave a review or rate the podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Much love to you all.